they are people that are looked up to and really really valued in the world, but they're dishing out utter nonsense advice where they're saying, multi millionaire who's got a very nice life and is famous, telling people that people should never ever risk their mental health. Nothing's worth it. And I accept that what he's trying to say. There's an element of, oh yeah, that's a nice message. But the reality is, there's no way he got where he is without sacrifice.
Eddie, good morning. Welcome to the show. If I can ask you to start by introducing yourself, please.
Hey everyone, yeah, I'm Eddie Whittingham, sort of I guess a multiple founder of various businesses, having sort of started and sold my main first startup really, and then a bit of a potted history before that of various roles, including police and lawyer.
Cool, thank you. So, Eddie, obviously, I've known you for a few years, and we worked together as a result of one of the acquisitions that we made. So, what I really like to understand is, what maketh the man? How did you get where you are today? What did the career look like? And first of all, you started off life as a police officer for Humberside Police, right? So, how did that happen? Was that like did you grow up always wanting to be a police officer?
No. So yeah, it was an interesting transition into that really. I grew up in Scunthorpe, which is a proper steelwork sort of northern town. And being probably honest with myself, I didn't have huge aspirations as I was growing up. Um, I sort of joked about this with one of my friends previously, that it was almost a bit like the sort of happy family pack of cards. It was like, do you want to be a butcher, a postman, a policeman, a doctor? And I didn't know,
Okay.
for example, that there were roles out there like, copywriters, advertising agencies, and all that sort of stuff. I probably just didn't have much exposure
Okay.
to it. From a working class background, dad worked in Greenwood's menswear. My mum was a housewife for the majority of her working life, so didn't probably have that exposure to some of the opportunities that I maybe now know there are in terms of all the business side of things. So I had done all right at school, fairly, decent enough results. But I thought, I guess I always thought that the police might be an interesting route to go down. So I applied when I was 18, which is obviously pretty young to get in the police. At the
Yeah.
same time that I was applying to go to university, and prior to my exams, um, I was told that I was able to get in the police. So it sort of skewed my interest in terms of doing the exams at college and then go to university. I just thought, well, actually,
Yeah.
why not just go straight in now, and earn some money and get some life experience. So I joined the police at 18, somewhat naively, probably, it's fair to say.
Well, it's an interesting route though, because a lot of people will say, or society says nowadays, go to school, go to college, go to get a degree at university, then you get a better job. So, interesting that you took that route. Did that affect you? Do you think, or because I know you did obviously did a degree afterwards, but did that affect you? Do you think, or not, in terms of your success as being a police officer?
It affected me in different ways, I think. I actually, on the whole, probably enjoyed the police in terms of camaraderie was amazing, some amazing life experiences. It's definitely changed me in a few ways, both from a business perspective and a personal perspective. From a personal perspective, it's probably made me somewhat numb to stuff because you're sort of
Yeah.
exposed to
Okay.
so much horrendous stuff. But from a business point of view, I think, and I actually work with a former colleague who I was in the police with now on one of our businesses, and one of the things we talk about a lot is, one thing the police is fantastic at is it teaches you to be able to very quickly talk to people from a huge range of backgrounds and kind of drill down into what makes them tick quite quickly.
Okay.
Especially if, being exposed to that from 18. So, whether it's somebody who's having a really hard time in life for whatever reason, maybe it's drug or alcohol dependent, through to someone who's particularly affluent. You generally, massive generalisation, but I think a lot of cops are very good at that, at dealing with different people in different problems, and helping sort of rationalise that quite quickly and get an outcome that they want.
I think interesting point you made there about being numb, or helps you being numb to certain situations. So I have family who are in the police force, and one of them's moved to a desk job because of the stuff that she faced on a day-to-day basis. And let's be honest, you're not dealing with the best people in society, and you don't always see the great things. So yeah, I get that. And so how long were you a police officer then?
Just shy of 10 years, so about 9.5, I think it was by the time I left.
Okay, so explain to obviously the next step for you was becoming a lawyer. So first of all, I've never heard of someone transitioning from being a police officer to a lawyer. So how did that happen?
Well, I guess I'd been in the police then for a number of years, maybe before I was thinking of truly getting out of it. I think probably around maybe, I can't remember for certain, but maybe 4 or 5 years in, I was thinking, do I want to do this for the rest of my life? They'd also just made some
Yeah,
massive changes to the pension. So when I joined at 18, the deal was I'd get to retire at 48 because I'd have to do 30 years. And
yep,
they'd do some pension
yep.
changes where it would result, I'd already worked X many years, but I was now going to have to retire at 60, which is still obviously young for retirement. But I was like, when I signed up, the deal was, in my mind, that, and now I've worked
Yeah,
5 years and I've got to do 35 years. So I was like, that sort of started to, those sort of things frustrated you, particularly when the job's already very hard. And I guess
yeah.
as I matured, I was probably trying to think what else was out there. So, for example, while all my friends were at work, um, and I had very little to do in the week with my days off, I went and volunteered at a radio station where I lived in Leeds. Just twofold, really. One, to give me something to do. I'm very, proactive and stuff like that, and I like to be busy. But I think secondly, really, just to give me some exposure to something I'd never done before, like something completely
Okay,
left field and interesting, and that got my brain ticking. And then the sort of quick version of the story as to why I then went into law was I was on the phone one day to a CPS lawyer, Crown Prosecution Service lawyer, as is very common for police officers to be when they're discussing cases.
yeah,
Because at that point I was doing sort of fraud investigation work, and having a long conversation, going through loads and loads of paperwork with the lawyer, and she just said, "Have you ever thought about becoming a lawyer?" And I was like, "No." Sort of very quickly discovered that there was one of the Leeds universities, which I live around the corner from, had a course that I could do and possibly could get onto with what qualifications I had, so without an undergrad degree. So I actually sort of
okay,
cheated the higher education system by getting onto a postgrad course, doing effectively what is the law conversion course in a year, and then going on to do my legal practice course. And then I topped that up to become a master's in law eventually. So
so did you do that all the time you were with the police?
yeah, so I looking back, I'm surprised I managed it really. So I dropped my hours. I managed to get the police to agree to drop my hours, and I was doing 30 hours a week, but I was studying, doing the course full time. So alongside all the other students that were full time and thinking it was hard work, I was also working 30 hours a week in the police. So it was
Yep,
quite an intense period of my life. I decided to sell my car at the time to save money. I got the train from Leeds to Scunthorpe, which is a bit of a pain in the ass because you have to transfer at Doncaster, but it meant I had an hour and a half commute
okay.
effectively. So I had a really small laptop. I'd do an hour and a half work on the way there, then an hour and a half work on the way back, just to be super productive. Like I say, I definitely couldn't be bothered to do that now. But at the time, I was really driven to do it, and it helped me get where I am, I guess.
So that's a really good point, because a lot of people couldn't be bothered to do that. That sounds like an awful lot of effort, and to me now in my later years, I wouldn't be doing that now
Yeah.
without doubt. I just wouldn't have
Well,
the drive or the commitment to do that at all.
no, no, likewise. But I think I
Cool.
knew. I think I knew at that point. I'd grown up in Scunthorpe, had a job in Scunthorpe. While I lived in Leeds, I knew that if I didn't do something way out of the comfort zone, I would never get out of the position I was in. So I knew I had to really push the envelope to kind of move it along. Really, otherwise, if I'd have half-assed it, I wouldn't have got anywhere with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it sounds like so. Obviously, I interview a lot of CEOs, and they come from a mixed backgrounds, but there is a certain characteristic that all of them have. And just from the initial conversations we've had so far today, I can tell you already have that in terms of aspirations, growth, pushing the boundaries, doing something different. Pushing your comfort zone. So obviously, the major changes. I know they're both sort of law related, but police officer, lawyer, and then tech entrepreneur. How on earth
Yeah,
did you transition from lawyer to tech entrepreneur?
it was organic. I didn't. It wasn't like a set decision I made. I landed as a lawyer on the first day on my training contract. You have to do 2 years of training contract, then you qualify. Landed on that first day, sat
Okay.
down behind the desk, and truthfully, I hated it. I kind of sat down. I was like, oh shit! Like I thought naively, the draw of the big glass offices in a city centre, working with amazing names like Sainsbury's and Rolls Royce and all that sort of stuff would fulfill me. And when I got there,
Yeah.
I very quickly realised it didn't. So that's when I guess I started thinking again, what is this it? Like I've worked that hard, all those hours I put in on that train and things like that for this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I started thinking about what else I could do. And slowly but surely, I actually stepped out of that job eventually to start a private investigation company. So basically providing like debt reports
Okay.
to law firms. Not particularly exciting work, but I knew what they were charging. I knew how easy it would be to do. And I thought, well, do you know what? If I can replace my wage as a lawyer doing this work, which is,
Yeah.
easy in my eyes, then I'll be
Yeah.
happy with that. And then it was when I was building that I saw the opportunity to kind of sidestep into to what I ended up doing, really.
So obviously we met as a result of your organisation for security awareness training. A lot of people won't even know what that is. I think it's some people in corporates have to do that by as a matter of course now. But do you want to just explain briefly what security awareness training is?
Yeah, effectively, it's a way of teaching your workforce or your employees about some of the dangers that are out there when you're online. So anything from how to make a safe password through to phishing emails through to what websites you shouldn't and should be using. And as you rightly said, a lot of companies will do that because they want to upskill the staff and avoid cybercrime and cybersecurity incidents. Others will do that
Yeah.
because it's a compliance requirement.
So that got acquired by Proofpoint, which is where we met. So I'm really keen to understand that when Proofpoint approached you, I assume it was out of the blue. And how long did that process take? I'm not going to ask how much you cashed out, but what was that process like? Because obviously that must have been a brand new thing for you as well.
Yeah, again, I was quite naive to the whole acquisition process. I'd had some exposure, obviously, when I was a lawyer at Adolf Goddard, but not enough experience to really prepare me for it. What was quite interesting, I'd already hired a consultant, a chief marketing officer who used to work at one of the big players, which you'll know very well know before, to
Yep.
get an inside track really in terms of what we could be doing to not necessarily get noticed by the other players in the market, but to develop us as a business. And it was a byproduct of that I started to realize actually there was companies like mine being acquired because of the
Yep.
content they were making. So that got my brain ticking that maybe that was an eventuality that could happen.
Okay.
So we did some very deliberate things. Gartner Peer Insights, which for people listening who might not be familiar, it's almost like a trust pilot, but very niche down. We started to
Yep.
drive as much of our customer base as we could towards that to develop a much greater awareness, both from a customer perspective, it made sales a lot easier, obviously, but secondly, to kind of wave a little bit at the bigger boys to say, we exist. But yeah, in terms
Yep.
of how it happened, it was really organic. I got a LinkedIn message to say, hey, we'd be interested in collaborating with you. And it was really interesting because it was, I largely think it was off the back of the work we did on the review platform. But within the same month,
Yep.
we got both Proofpoint, obviously, which is a massive organisation, and then one of their big competitors, CoFence, also reached out within that same month about collaboration, and it transpired.
Yeah.
One collaboration was the acquisition, and the other collaboration was they were interested in licensing the content. So, yeah, strange. Never connected with that person. It was just literally a message out of the blue to say, "Are you interested?"
It's interesting. So, from my point of view, obviously, I worked for the organisation that made the acquisition, and when the wind's blowing the right direction, the right speed, everything lines up nicely. So, when we were acquired by Proofpoint, I've been there for about a year, 18 months, so maybe even 2 years, and we were looking to strengthen our position in the security awareness training market. And I think your organisation were one of the only companies worldwide that made some really good video content. And I think that's really
Yeah.
one of the reasons that you put your head above the parapet and said, I'm a good target for acquisition. So obviously you did the right thing. How long did that take from the LinkedIn message through to acquisition?
How long? I think the initial outreach was in Augustish, and then the acquisition took place in the May. So it took a while. Like it, and probably
Okay.
I knew it would take a while. That didn't surprise me. But yeah, I think that's probably not an unrealistic timeline if people are thinking about acquisitions.
Yeah. Did you get a good deal, do you think?
Very, yeah,
Could you
yeah.
have asked for more? Excellent.
Possibly, but I might not have got it, to be honest. I think it was a very fair deal for both sides because there's a lot of stuff that for sure we've done a lot of good in the marketplace, but
Yeah.
obviously remember COVID had literally just kicked off as well,
Yep.
and there were
Yep.
there were there were proof point were extremely fair to me. That they could have probably gone backwards on their own on their offer based on COVID and all sorts of stuff, and they didn't. So no, it was a
Yeah.
yeah, it was a great deal for me personally. I wouldn't have accepted it if it wasn't because I knew we were moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I know some, excuse me, some folks that's still there, and the product set is still doing very, very well, and there's still a great market opportunity for it. So, which is cool. So, you did that. What do you do then? Take some time off, time out, or to ponder your next steps? What happened?
Did I? No, not really. I probably should have done. Um,
Yeah.
I very quickly started a lot of other things, possibly with with an element of arrogance because I've just sold business, so I can do whatever I want, kind of thing, and
Yeah.
also a
Yeah.
level of naivety. Although I do think that naivety is what has always kind of played me quite nicely. So I I can't sit still, truthfully. So I always want to be doing something. So probably within even a few months of selling, I'd started or created a platform which my intention was to basically almost a bit of a give back, really, give people a platform whereby they can learn how to start a business, but minus some of the BS that you get online because there's so much stuff
Yeah.
about getting rich quick and
Yeah.
it just infuriates me. I wanted it to be like a very realistic. Here's how you start a business. You need to test it before you put any money into it. Have you even got a
Yeah.
financial model that actually works and doesn't suck? So built that. Spent a bit of time building that and money building that. Co-founded a baby children's brand with a friend of mine as a result of the birth of my first daughter at the time. She was born in
Yeah.
October during the period we were selling, and then I uh, bought a old church, so a church that was built in 1891. I bought that to turn into like a co-working sort of office space. That's twofold really: long-term investment, make good use of some money,
Yeah.
but also
Yeah.
like create an atmosphere that I'll enjoy working in. Because truthfully, one of the downsides to selling has been it's actually been quite lonely since because I'm used to being surrounded by people and having a team and whatever working life I've always been surrounded by a lot of people, but that's obviously been quite different since selling.
So interesting enough. So obviously, you built the company up. It was acquired. You've then gone off and done stuff. I know. I think the Grow Grows was. I think you have a co-founder. I think there's two of you doing that. But why? What are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to create another business? You want to get acquired again? Do you want? What's the plan with these businesses?
It's really interesting. I think my position has changed a lot in the same way that when I started the defence works, I didn't genuinely start that to sell it. I started it with a level of naivety, and then it eventually realised that actually there's great value in an exit. Um,
Yeah.
GoFounder is more of a GoFounder is sort of the platform where we're helping startups and founders grow. That's been more of a kind of passion project more than anything, truthfully. Grow
Okay.
Grows, which is the baby brand, that's definitely more of something we are trying to scale that and potentially exit that in the future. And then,
Yep.
like I say, the church is more of a long-term investment and partly fulfillment for myself. And truthfully, with each of those, I think lies the fact that I've I've got a thirst for like learning really. So like I
Yep.
like the idea of challenging myself with a product brand and something in real estate and something online. Rather than I could have quite easily sort of set up another cybersecurity company. I've already got a lot of connections and customers
Yep.
and so on.
Yep.
it wasn't what floated my boat. Truthfully, I just did it because there was a good opportunity there. And yeah, so yeah, I think it's for me, it's kind of the learning journey of it is what excites me.
So in terms, so we'll go through those three businesses because I want to talk about them in more detail. But with the Grows, I see you recently got some investment in that.
Yeah.
Why did you seek external investment rather than personal investment?
Uh, Mainly because we've already put quite a bit of our own money into it,
Yep.
and also on top of that, it's just diversifying that investment is always sensible anyway. But secondly,
Yep.
some of the contacts that the people who've come on board can bring is really valuable. So like one of our lead investors on that is a guy called John Ayton. He's the founder of Links of London. He sold that a few years back mine, but for 50 million quid. So like the
Yep.
connections of someone like that and the knowledge of someone like that versus me who's built a startup
Of
is
course.
completely different league. So yeah, it's a tactical play as well as a financial play.
Cool. So I want to talk about the GoFounder stuff. Before I do that, I want to talk about how different your social media persona is. Not from you, but in terms of the industry norm for helping entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned there about the entrepreneurial BS that's out there. So I'm going to quote you, right? So, want to pretend you're an entrepreneur by delaying the reality of your business dying on its arse before it's even begun. So I think that's quite tame for some of the stuff you've written. So,
Yeah.
what's the background of what's the background and reason for being brutal and upfront, especially on LinkedIn?
Uh, Probably that's the way I was brought up. So that's how I always see it. People who know me know I'm pretty blunt and straight to the point. Not in a rude way. Like I'm one of the nicest. Well, rich coming from me, but I'm like a nice guy, and I genuinely want the
Yeah,
best for anyone. But the reason I'm probably quite blunt is to to be a tonic to the sort of softly you can do anything you want to and all this sort of nonsense, because
yeah,
it's just not the reality. And like the stuff that I see all the time by these, people that they are people that are looked up to and really valued in the world, but they're dishing out utter nonsense advice where they're saying,
yeah, yeah,
multi millionaire who's got a very nice life and is famous, telling people that people should never ever risk their mental health. Nothing's worth it. And I accept that what he's trying to say. There's an element of, oh yeah, that's a nice message. But the reality is,
yeah,
there's no way he got where he is without sacrifice. And he now has a much easier life as a result of it. And similarly for myself, I had 3 or 4 years where it was extremely difficult and my mental health probably did take a toll. However, I now
yeah.
have the next however long I've got left on this planet where life's a lot easier than it would be otherwise. So yeah, I
Right.
guess my tone of voice is A, me, but B, just to try and act as a tonic because there's so much bad advice out there about starting a business and growing a business that I just kind of wanted to counter that a little bit.
So with the Go founder has transitioned from the original concept, from what
Yeah,
I've seen.
yeah.
So
Well, a bit of a fork in the road with it in two senses. So the original idea with GoFundMe, I wanted to create a platform whereby it had everything that someone needed to start a business. Um, and I, partly because I was obviously busy with my other ventures, probably didn't give it enough attention as it perhaps deserved. But secondly, I never quite got the interest levels right to make it a sustainable proposition. Um, and yeah, it kind of was missing the mark. And I think the problem that I maybe had with it was we were targeting an audience whereby loads of people want to start a business, but truthfully,
yeah,
not many people are cut out. So yeah, I started to rethink what I wanted to do with it really, and then one of my kind of goals with it is to keep the education side of it free, because I think if we can provide something that's completely for free as a tonic to all that rubbish advice that's out there, then that'll have
yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
legs and a lot of value. But naturally, I don't want to do something that just hemorrhages money all the time. I want to make a money, an income from that, a revenue stream from that for it, so it can be self-sustaining. So that's when I hired former colleague of mine, Ben, and basically we now, as part of the GoFounder offering, provide what is accountability coaching. So I have a
okay,
bit of a problem with coaching generally. Um, but the idea behind the accountability coaching is rather than it being a fluffy business coach, you're going to pay £2,000 a month to tell you stuff that you probably already know. The idea behind this is
Yeah.
it's purely focused on your accountability and your productivity. So you have a 20-minute call every single week, and the idea is to drive you to get the things that matter most done as quickly as possible. So the stuff that's going to move the needle the fastest, and it's 300 quid a month. So it's super. The idea is it's super affordable. There's no excuse not to. So the idea behind that is we're going to hopefully build that. We've had a really good response to that, but build that, and then that in turn can support and basically pay for the infrastructure around the free version of GoFounder. So people who want to start a business still
Okay.
have that. Whether I need to transition that in the future to it, maybe a not-for-profit or something, I'm not quite sure yet, but we'll see. We're still early days with that.
So with the accountability coaching, is there a certain profile customer or person that you're working with, or is it open to anyone that wants to start a business?
It's typically for founders who are already set up and revenue generating, because
Okay.
I think if they're starting a business, I'd probably say, look, save your money, get yourself on the free platform. There's everything you need to know in there. And truthfully, if they're somebody who really wants to start a business, they will use that to be able to keep themselves accountable. I think it's when you're up and running that there's so many distractions and there's so much kind of still constant advice coming in. It's just helping people narrow the focus on what they should be working on. That's going to get them to the win the quickest, really. That's been
Yeah.
the challenge, and yeah, so that's what we focus on, really.
Are those can be typically the most difficult characters to work with, though, can they? Because they're CEO founders. They're running something.
Oh, yeah.
Are they less likely to take advice? I don't know.
Well, that's the interesting thing, Lisa, because we're not really giving them the advice because most of these founders are high performing, hyper intelligent, or at least intelligent, so they know what they need to be doing, but they're just not maybe doing the things that are because typically the stuff that moves the needle is the laborious work. A lot of sales stuff can be laborious for some people, so they often avoid it.
Yeah.
So rather than driving sales, they'll fanny around with a new feature on the product and things like that. So actually, all we're actually
Yeah.
doing, we're not giving them advice at all. We're just saying, you tell me what's the most important thing, what's going to get you closer to doubling your revenue, and then we'll make them and hold them
Yeah.
accountable to doing it. There's a really interesting study, which is what we based a lot of what we've done off, and it was you are 95% more likely to achieve a task, activity, goal, whatever it might be, 95% if you have someone hold you accountable for it, which is insane. So that's kind
That's
of the premise
interesting.
of it, really. So not we're not teaching them to do anything that's new. There's no hocus pocus. There's no you know advice really. Albeit obviously we do have advice to share given our experience, but
Yeah.
it's mainly you know what you need to be doing. We'll help you do it and just make sure you're going to do it, and that's it really.
So, do you say that because there'll be people listening to this that obviously want to start their own business or want to improve their business, etc. What's the first thing you when you do your scouting call with these new potential customers that want the coaching? What sort of things are you looking to find out? Because obviously you need to figure out if you can help them in the first place. But what sort of qualification criteria are you using to see if you can help?
I think it's just learning a bit more about the business first and foremost, because that we do get people come to us with they're maybe early stage and they're not revenue generating, or the revenue is so small that they need to really focus down on proving more of a market fit before we work with them. I think the sweet spot for us
Okay.
is where people have proven market fit, they've got some revenue in, but they're just struggling to focus on the stuff that matters most. Because again, I think I go back to that. If they're still early, like super early stage, that's where, for example, like the platform and stuff is probably where you need to be, because there's enough value and information on that to help you get there. And again, similarly with market fit, a lot of that is because people are nervous to do the work they need to prove it's market fit, because if they do the work and then there isn't a market fit, they haven't got a business. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's interesting to talk to those people, because you can quite quickly establish that they maybe haven't got a great business, or they're not the foundations for it, and then maybe you're going to need to pivot really to get the income to scale it to where they need to be.
One point you mentioned earlier about was sales. Of all the CEOs I've spoken to on this series, all of them have an element of salesperson within them. They do. Do you think that's really important?
Yes. Yeah, I do, and
So
I so important. I speak to, because in the last couple of years in selling, I've must have spoken to hundreds of founders, and the thing that comes up time and time again, and you'll see this, Paul, given your background, is loads of founders want to be able to completely pass off sales to somebody else, and I
yeah,
just don't think you can, particularly those early stage business. And I was guilty of this. My first hire was a business development manager. And I very quickly realized that they were not going to be any better at it than I was. I needed to do it. And I ended up giving them the
yeah,
task, freed me up to do the sales effectively. Yeah, I think a lot of people like the idea of being an entrepreneur, like the idea of being a founder, but they're not willing to do the sales. And if you're not willing to do the sales, you've got no right to be a founder or a CEO in my eyes, because you've got to sell it, and no one's going to sell it like you. People are too scared of that, I think.
So the world we live in right now, if with social media and LinkedIn and everything like that, and all the BS stuff that you talked about earlier, it appears that anybody can run their own business, everyone can be successful, and anyone can be a multi-millionaire, which is truly rubbish, right? So what are the key characteristics you think for someone to be successful?
Ooh, I think. What do I think? I mean, I think work ethic is number one. Like, you've got to be able to rip up trees and not get tired and keep ripping them up.
Yeah,
I think in those sort of 3.5 to 4 years when I was building the defence works, like, I was relentless. Working every hour, working the weekends, you name it. So I think that's one. I think self-sacrifice. This is a really unpopular thing that people think about when they're starting a business, but to give yourself the best chance of success, you need to have a level of self-sacrifice that maybe makes you uncomfortable, and that could be downsizing your house, getting rid of your car, all those sort of things, having a much worse lifestyle to reinvest in your own future. So, as an example, when we were building the defence works, I did take a wage for ages, and when we had money in the business bank to potentially take a wage, I didn't. I just hired somebody else, because I was gambling, really effectively reinvesting in the hope that it would pay off. And there would have come a time when I had to start taking a serious wage out of it and running it properly. But I think that's an unpopular view, because most people want to have 2 holidays a year, have a nice car on tick, get another house with a bigger bed, all that sort of stuff. But I don't think you can have it all, personally.
So interesting, that second point there, the self-sacrifice, which I think is a reality check. And I think the way that entrepreneurialism is portrayed now, you don't need to make that self-sacrifice. You should be able to get rich quick. So that's quite a home truth, I think. And it's just interesting that I ask this question to everybody, and although the answers may be slightly different, all point to the same thing. What advice would you give to a younger Eddie Whittingham now? Would you change anything? What advice would you give? Fresh out of school.
Ooh, don't join the police. No, it's interesting now, because I say don't join the police, but I look back. So many of my decisions have led me to where I am, and it's so hard, because some of the people that I've met in the police shaped me into who I am. Some experience I have shaped me into who I am. When I was volunteering at a radio station, which at the time just felt like a bit of a laugh and something to do, I met who you will know as the cyber guys, 2 lads called Larry and Paul, who did comedy videos later for me.
Yeah, I remember those videos. Yep.
And it was interesting how my journey all kind of came back together and helped me in the inverted commas success that I had, really. Probably wouldn't have wasted as much money on cars when I was 18 as I did, and I'd have probably put that into some investments. I could have had a couple of houses probably by the time I was by the age of 30, I could have had a couple of houses just off rather than wasting money on cars. But you got to live, haven't you?